this episode of Firepower, take the desert by storm with the 174th Tactical Fighter Wing's tank-fighting F-16s. Scramble into the skies above northern Kuwait, descend on Republican Guard positions loaded with high explosives, and dodge Iraqi MiGs and surface-to-air missiles. From Syracuse, New York to Al-Karj Air Base, a squadron of citizen soldiers demonstrates the right stuff in Air Guard.
With the waning of the Cold War, air forces around the world are reconsidering their peacetime organization. Can they afford to keep all their units on full-time duty? The United States Air Force has long experience with another alternative, the Air National Guard. The Air National Guard squadrons are based around part-time pilots and ground personnel, augmented with a small full-time corps, making them more economical in peacetime than active units.
The Air National Guard is one of three components of the United States Air Force. There's an active component, an Air Force Reserve, and the Air National Guard. And together, under the total force policy, we follow parallel paths of training convergent to the same destination, which is to be prepared to be called to active duty and deployed to an area of military interest to the United States and perform our mission effectively. And that, of course, is what happened during the Desert Shield, Desert Storm experience. Total force worked very well, in my opinion, for the United States Air Force in all mission areas, including the fighter mission represented here at Syracuse. The Air National Guard is represented in virtually all of the Air Force missions. The sole exception that I'm aware of at this moment is the Strategic Nuclear Forces. We're represented in air refueling forces, but not the strategic bombers. Virtually every other Air Force area and weapons system is represented in part by the Air National Guard. In terms of differences between the components within this total force, I think the principal one is that the workforce in the National Guard tends to be more stable. We don't undergo a transfer from unit to unit on a periodic basis measured in terms of several years. And so that stability enables the experience to be brought forth to the mission with a lower requirement for ongoing training. At the end of 20 years, an active duty person and an Air National Guard person have probably flown the same number of hours, but the active person did it very intensely for a while and then was assigned away from a flying assignment, whereas the Air Guard person did it at a lower rate throughout that entire period. It's a little bit like the tortoise and the hare, only in this case, both the tortoise and the hare arrive at the 20-year point with approximately the same experience at the same time, just achieved under slightly different circumstances.
Typical of the Air National Guard are the F-16 squadrons of the 174th Tactical Fighter Wing, nicknamed the Boys from Syracuse. Of the Air National Guard come from many walks of life. Many were regular Air Force pilots who left to become airline pilots. Now they fly with the Air National Guard in their free time.
I got out in February '81, and I lucked out really as far as getting an airline job right away. And I flew for the airlines for about a year, and of course that's what I still do right now for a living. That's been 10 years ago. But what motivated me to get back in the Guard, I took a year off just to see if I was going to miss the flying and the camaraderie that's involved in the fraternity of fighter pilots, and sure enough I did. So I was definitely motivated to get back in and flying fighters. And Syracuse, New York, I heard a lot about it. It's a fantastic unit, and I joined this back in February of '82. I flew A-10s until we got the F-16 a couple years ago.
Not all of the pilots with the Air National Guard served in the active duty Air Force, nor are all of them airline pilots in civilian life. Pilots are only a small fraction of the personnel of a fighter squadron. Modern combat aircraft, especially ones as complex as the F-16, do not fly without a great deal of attention from the maintenance and support staff of the squadron. The Air National Guard has been able to attract a solid core of men and women whose experience often surpasses that found in active duty squadrons. The Air National Guard represents a very different lifestyle from active duty service. The guardsmen can count on being stationed in an area where their family lives and not face the disruption in family life that comes from the frequent moves of the active duty servicemen.
The Guard is like a real family-oriented thing because you don't move around like the active. You could stay at a base 3 years and then you go on to another place. Here, you're always here. And people live, you know, around the area. And the reason I got in is because when I was a kid, really young, my father was out here working. And I always liked airplanes, and he'd always get me out here, and I got really orientated with the base and how things went. I said, yeah, I'm going to do that. And my brother's 2 years older than me, and he had already gotten into it, and I just got into it. But as far as the family aspect of the Guard, I think you get a lot of that because, like I say, they don't move around. That's another advantage of the Guard. You're right here all the time. And like when you go to basic training and tech school, you know where you're going to end up.
In spite of the motivation and experience of the Guardsmen, there has long been an underlying anxiety that part-time pilots may not be as capable as their active duty counterparts in the event of war. In 1991, that viewpoint was put to the test during Operation Desert Storm.
Yeah, that is a perception, I think, that's out there. It's called the weekend warrior. Hopefully we put that myth to bed in the Desert Storm. But when you're talking the experience level, the difference we have is that the Guardsmen, number one, they're very motivated to be in the Guard unit. That's all they want to do is fly. And we don't have a lot of additional duties for the Guardsmen when they come in. They can just concentrate on that flying.
When the Air Force staff began to plan for air operations in the event of war with Iraq, special attention was paid to the close air support role. The 174th Tactical Fighter Wing was one of the units considered for deployment to Saudi Arabia because of its specialization in the ground attack mission. One of its squadrons, the 138th, was earmarked for Saudi deployment.